on his way. Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Motherfucker, he's on his...
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Mountain Murders.
I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
And this is a very sick episode of Mountain Murder. So we apologize in advance. But we kind of thought an episode, even if we sound terrible, is better than no episode. Right, Dylan?
Yes, as you put it a minute ago, a snotty episode's better than no episode.
It's true. Yeah, we don't know what's going on. It's like first it was Dylan, and now it's me. So we get to relish in our sickness together, just wallow in it.
Yes, we're like sticky and sick.
Ew.
I did notice when I showered this morning, I was like, wow, I should have done that probably last night.
Well, I told you last night that you probably should have taken a shower.
Right.
Yeah.
But I was debilitated.
It's because you're a big baby.
It's true.
It's very true. I think most women out there who have husbands and boyfriends know they get a sniffle. It's over.
I never get sick, but when I do, I'm really sick, even if I'm not, because I'm just a big baby.
Yeah.
So it's probably for the best that it happens very seldom.
Well, I've been babying you, right? I've been trying to baby you.
You have.
Hot teas, soups, little neck rubs.
Yes.
Comfy pillows on the couch so you can pile up. Yeah. I know I feel much worse today than I did yesterday.
So it's time for me to baby you.
No, I don't need babying. I can take care of myself.
Oh, no.
Dylan, we have a few sponsors to thank, folks who have joined us at patreon.com/Mountain Murders Podcast and are supporting the show through our troubled times.
It's true.
So we appreciate that.
We would like to thank Kat and Kathleen for their new patronage.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Sponsoring today's episode. Dylan, are you ready to get to it?
It's time to put in work.
I'm ready. This is a case that I've known about for a long time. A lot of folks out there have probably, they're probably familiar with the case, but I'm hoping that maybe I can give you a bit of a deep dive and offer up some details that you didn't know.
In true Mountain Murder fashion.
Phyllis Shanley immigrated to the United States from Ireland in the 1950s. Having grown up in a rural home with 6 kids, Phyllis escaped the boggy farm to Dublin, where she studied nursing. She was not against hard work, soon taking up jobs in a large New York City hospital and private nursing work. After 3 years, Phyllis attended a dance sponsored by an Irish organization where she met Bob Chambers. Bob had lived a charmed life with a house in Westchester and a family vacation cabin on Lake Placid.
Now, could you imagine? It's nerve-wracking enough to move like to a new town or a new state or a new city. Moving to a completely new country.
Yes. Having come from boggy farmland,
Yeah.
right, to New York City, that's quite a difference.
Got to be a huge culture shock.
And when I think of Lake Placid, all I can think of is the horror movie.
Yeah.
With the creature.
All you can think
big
of
gator.
is Betty Davis.
Betty White.
I'm sorry. Betty White feeding the alligator.
Yes. Bob spent his youth in private schools, then attended Mitchell College and American University. In 1965, after 4 years of dating, they were married. A year into the marriage, Phyllis gave birth to their only child, Robert. Phyllis wasn't the most affectionate mother, but she taught her son manners. He shook hands by the time he was 3 years old, and she played educational games with him. The family lived in Woodside, a neighborhood in Queens. Money was tight. Bob had a good job, but it was not very well paying in the credit department of Dunn and Bradstreet. Phyllis was doing part-time nursing work. Most of her patients lived in Manhattan's Upper East Side. Phyllis dreamed of one day living on the Upper East Side herself. She coveted the chandeliers, the artwork, the bourgeoisie lifestyle of these wealthy clients.
And I mean, who wouldn't, honestly?
You want to live on Park Avenue?
Well, no, if you're coming from meager means and you're kind of around the edges of this type of wealth and
society.
And society. I mean, it would, I think anyone would kind of want more or want a little bit of that life from them for themselves.
Finally, the couple moved to Jackson Heights. It wasn't a posh or opulent brownstone or palatial apartment, but it would do. Phyllis was said to have decorated it tastefully, spending hours polishing her wooden furniture. Phyllis was working not just for wealthy folks, but for like really wealthy folks, even being hired to care for John F. Kennedy Jr., who was suffering from a childhood respiratory illness.
Wow.
So she's rubbing shoulders and hobnobbing with the Kennedys and folks of that stature.
Well, they were a huge deal. That family's been a big deal for generations. So, I mean, she's at the height of society and, powerful people.
Phyllis enrolled her 4-year-old son at the prestigious St. David's School Nursery. Families like the Hursts enrolled their children at the Catholic school, and Phyllis was a deeply devout Catholic. The school was far away from their apartment and incredibly expensive, but Phyllis thought it was worth the sacrifice. Bob, who had a drinking problem since his teen years, began drinking more heavily and neglecting his duties to the family. Phyllis was considered a bit old-fashioned and strict. She still hit young Robert with a strap when he was naughty. Phyllis had a lot of rules, albeit sensible ones. Robert was required to finish his homework before playing. He wasn't allowed to watch television much and had to go outdoors for recreation no matter the weather. Young Robert was obedient, well-mannered, and quiet. Phyllis, who was caring for Mildred Hurst, worked long hours and didn't spend a great deal of time with her child. He seemed lonely, and the fact that he went to St. David's School further isolated him from other kids in the neighborhood.
Yeah, so he can't even have
Just regular friends.
Right. He can't even go to the same school his neighbors and people in the neighborhood go to, make friends, talk about school, have something in common.
He goes to this hoity-toity school.
Yeah, which is tough for him because I can imagine in the hoity-toity school, he doesn't fit in either.
Right.
Right. That could be
He's
so.
really not accepted into either world, it seems.
That seems like that would be so hard for a young person.
Well,
to
I
deal with
think it was hard for Robert, and we will see as time goes on, maybe some of the ways he deals with those feelings. Phyllis, who had grown up poor and difficult, embraced the American lifestyle. She shopped at thrift stores, buying up last season's wardrobes donated by wealthy housewives. She dressed impeccably and became an outspoken parent at St. David's. She set her table with fine china and linens, mostly purchased secondhand. In 1974, when Robert was 8, Phyllis enrolled him in the Knickerbocker Grays. Now, Dylan, we must talk about the Knickerbocker Grays a little bit. It just sounds uppity, doesn't it?
Yes, certainly.
It was a military-style drill team. It was an elite group. Vanderbilts and Rockefellers had been members. But by the 1970s, it was less exclusive. The membership still belonged to Manhattan's most exclusive private schools, though. Phyllis was eager for her son to join and make the right sort of friends. Robert loved being a Gray, and he excelled as a cadet. After his second year in the group, Phyllis found an apartment on Park Avenue near the Armory. It was near Spanish Harlem, a small apartment, plain in style. Yet Phyllis was very proud to let everybody know that they were now on Park Avenue.
Well, that's one of those things. It doesn't matter if you're living in a closet. If you can say you're living on Park Avenue, that comes with a little bit of I don't know. It comes with an air about it, or like if someone actually went and saw your apartment, they'd be like, "Well, hold on, this is just a hole in the wall." But as you're telling people about it, it sounds good.
Though Phyllis worked long hours, she enjoyed doing charitable work through various Catholic organizations. And though Robert was quiet and shy, he was a popular child who had a big circle of friends. By 10, Robert and other boys were smoking marijuana. At one child's birthday party, a piggy bank was robbed of $20 in change, which had been saved from allowances. Some of the boys, including Robert, were experimenting with alcohol too. Now, due to his mother's involvement in the Catholic Church, Robert became an altar boy at St. Thomas under the sponsorship of Father Theodore McCarrick. Later, McCarrick would be accused of sexual abuse. The accusations dated back to the 1970s, and eventually he was defrocked. There has been some speculation that perhaps Robert suffered abuse at the hands of Father McCarrick, as his behavior seemed to take a sharp turn after becoming an altar boy. But that's never been confirmed. It's just speculated.
Man, these devoutly religious families that, and of course they're just doing what they think is right. That helps a young person build character, learn some skills as far as, devotion, dedication, and just doing a job and, doing a proper job at something. But they're literally just delivering their children up unknowingly to these monsters. And that just really, I don't know, that really disgusts me.
Yeah, I mean, we try not to talk too much trash about religion on Mountain Murders. I think most people know that we're not very religious at all. But it reminds me, so last night I was watching the acclaimed film Women Talking, directed by Sarah Polley. If you haven't seen it, I think it's great. You should check it out. But it is about a group of Mennonite women, and it's based on a true story where they are brutally raped
Systematically.
by their own by their fellow men, the Mennonite men in this community, and they're being drugged with cow tranquilizers. And we're talking little girls age 3 all the way up to women age 60. And a lot of these women are becoming pregnant. They're unmarried and having babies, and they're being forced to decide, do they want to stay and forgive the men, or do they want to take the women and leave the community? And they're all very worried about the forgiveness and their own salvation if they don't forgive these men. And it puts them in this really tough predicament.
Right.
And so that's the film, is these women discussing like what they're going to do. And it's very powerful. But it just really hits home, like these very devout people, and they're concerned with, of course, we are recording, so we have to have somebody drive by in their loud ass truck.
Yeah, apparently an airplane just flew by down the road.
Exactly. If you heard that, it was
Thanks.
It was our lovely neighborhood here. But I've just always sort of struggled with that concept of like forgiveness, and the idea that all you have to do is basically say I'm sorry and you're forgiven of absolved of your sins,
Right.
even though you've done these horrible things. I don't know. It's like a struggle, right?
Yeah, and I think my biggest problem, we'll move on, but I think my biggest problem with the child abuse in the Catholic Church is the Catholic Church's reaction to it. If they had ferreted
for
that,
years hiding it,
Yeah.
transferring priests, the cover-ups.
yes, that's the problem. I mean, of course, we wish it hadn't happened in the first place, but if they took a heavy hand of discipline and distanced themselves and just totally, outcasts, and made sure that every priest found to be, culpable in this was held to, pay for this by the letter of the law and their own religious law, then obviously that would have been much better, and people could have been kept from being a victim. That's a whole nother podcast.
Well, Phyllis's social climbing continued, Dylan. She became a board member for the Grays and was eventually voted president. One successful alumni called the Grays, quote, a tunnel leading into the old boys network. And Phyllis was dead set on her son becoming part of that life. While Phyllis was building a proper social life for them, Bob went to rehab, but fell off the wagon and continued to drink. By 13, Robert told a friend his mother's pressures and demands were grinding him down. She was incredibly stern. Robert was growing into a handsome young man, and girls paid attention. They were drawn to his good looks, the military bearing he exhibited, and playful flirtation. Yet he had a cruel side. One girl made fun of him verbally, then kind of kicked him in the rear jokingly during one of these like sort of playful back and forth sessions. Robert had a sudden burst of anger, grabbing the girl's arm, twisting it so hard she thought it was going to break.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Again, Dylan, we discussed this the other day amongst ourselves. This is why parents say no horseplay.
Well, yeah, because no horse playing, because at first it's funny, but
inevitably someone's going to get hurt or pissed off.
Somebody goes a little too hard, or their feelings get hurt in front of other people, and then the next thing you know, they're fighting.
Robert was drinking and smoking pot regularly, enough that it was impacting him physically, like, for example, passing out at Gray events. Other parents mentioned this to Phyllis, but she rejected the notion her son was involved in any such behavior, stating that it had to be the flu.
Yeah, it was the flu was the reason he passed out, not because he was drunk.
Phyllis asked a friend to help with Robert's boarding school application. According to her, he had his heart set on Choate, which is in Connecticut and ranked the second best boarding school in America. In the essay, Robert wrote about his life experience with the Greys and how it helped him develop good character along with responsibilities of assuming command. His grades weren't particularly good, and he had not tested well on the secondary school aptitude test. So Cho was hesitant to admit Robert, though he provided glowing references. But they decided to accept him based on the experience with the Greys. Robert felt proud of himself, though he had not really earned a seat at the table. The man who helped Robert with admissions application would later tell his wife, quote, "His porch light is off," about the boy.
Oh, okay. So it's like there's just something about him that he doesn't get it, or he doesn't. Oh yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, after Robert went to boarding school, Phyllis and Robert decided that Bob's alcoholism was just too much. She asked a friend to help remove him from their home, and it was the same gentleman who had helped with these essays on this application. Back at school, Robert began using cocaine.
No, hold on. She asked the gentleman to help her remove Bob from the home.
Yes.
Like just literally go in there and physically get him
Yeah,
and
like,
get
can
him
you
out
help
of the
me
house.
pack his things and make him leave?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, it put this other gentleman in a very awkward predicament, right? Because he, like, knows the man's an alcoholic and he wants to help out, but he's also like, it's not really my place to go in. And so they almost kind of stage like an intervention where the guy's like, look, your wife and son really want you to leave.
Well, nobody wants to
But-
get into other people's business, let alone some messy business like that, because then you're like caught in the middle
Well,
of
no,
it.
I think some people want to put themselves in the middle of business like that.
Well, I should say most people.
But I think most reasonable people don't want to involve themselves in this kind of family dispute.
No, I avoid drama in my own life at all cost.
Yeah, I have no desire to get involved in other people's domestic situations.
And I will not. I refuse to partake in other people's drama.
I'm sorry, I'm drinking some hot tea. Well, for a number of reasons. I mean, it could turn violent quickly. It's really none of your business.
Well, it's just a lot of work, emotional work that I'm not willing to invest in you.
Well, there's that. Back at school, Robert began using cocaine, as I mentioned. His absences from class due to late night partying started to take a toll, and teachers worried about him. When called into the vice principal's office, Robert assured that his work was fine along with his grades. Yet after Christmas, the first semester behind him, Robert was asked not to return to the boarding school. Phyllis was distraught. She quickly found a private school for her son. He could live at home the next year. Despite being kicked out of Choate, Robert was allowed to go on a school-sponsored trip to Spain, where he spent a lot of time drinking in tapas bars.
See, he was so proud to get in there, but then it's like he's not willing to put the work
Oh,
in.
not at all.
And I believe it's because his mom keeps getting, rubbing elbows, making friends with these people of prestige, and they're kind of getting him over the top with their references and the people they know, but he's not truly earning his spot at the table.
Dylan, if you are playing a game of whack-a-mole right now, you just won like 25 tickets.
Wow,
I think
really?
you just hit the nail on the head.
Okay.
And Robert likes the, I guess, the praise and the glory that comes with, oh, I'm going to this private school, but yet he's not doing anything to stay there, right? Some of Phyllis's friends wondered how she could afford trips abroad, private schools, and limousines. Maybe Bob's family helped out. Phyllis worked all the time, usually nights and 12-hour shifts. And by the way, Bob's family, who did have some money, absolutely did not help out. It was fall of 1981 that Robert began sophomore year at Browning, an elite New York City prep school. While mingling with well-heeled kids back in Manhattan, Robert often lied. He would tell people his mother was a doctor, his father was president of a record company. They were kids who vacationed in the Hamptons, wore Rolex watches, and were obsessed with money. Drugs made up a large part of their social lives. They partied nearly every night, taking limos to discos in the city. Everyone had money but Robert. And he's desperately trying to fit in with these people.
Yeah, see, I wouldn't, I don't know. I've never wanted to fit in with people, period, really, let alone someone who's totally out of my class or, I don't know.
It's so strange to me because these kids, I mean, they're 15, 16, some as young as like 13, 14, are renting limos and going to discos like Studio 54. the danceteria, like very famous 80s nightclubs, the Limelight. And they're getting in and they're partying.
Doesn't make sense.
Right?
Well, for one, they're underage. But I mean, it just
Yeah.
goes to show when if your parents are powerful and rich, that just lubes all the wheels and doors for you, right?
Robert's reputation was a subject of intense gossip. People saw him rifling through coat pockets at parties. He would open drawers in the parents' rooms of whatever kid was throwing a party. People saw him, yet nobody dared to challenge him. In 1982, Robert's mother moved them again, this time to East 90th Street off Fifth Avenue. They were able to make the move when their former apartment went co-op. They bought it cheap, then sold it for a profit. Finally, Phyllis was living in an apartment which she felt suited their lifestyle. It had been like this really big mansion and converted into apartments. So it kind of offered all the things she was looking for, like the high ceilings, this really nice neighborhood.
A chandelier.
Probably. Robert's trouble continued at Browning. At one point, a teacher's purse went missing, and later Phyllis found credit cards in his room belonging to that teacher. He was expelled. Robert didn't seem to care, and he told a friend, quote, "To hell with preppies."
Yeah, I mean, they're getting all up in arms about me, like robbing their parents and stuff when I come over. Like, who are they supposed to be? What the hell, Robert?
Prep school and Ivy League were what Phyllis wanted and expected of her son. Yet Robert seemed indifferent. With no good prep schools willing to take her son, Phyllis sent Robert to drug rehab in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. By February of 1982, Robert was back in Manhattan and on his way to York Preparatory, where his mother had pulled some strings. His IQ was 120, but his grades were unimpressive. Robert joined the soccer team as a star athlete, but his grades were so inconsistent. His mother got him a summer job at a Wall Street law firm. Robert was often surrounded by girls. They just loved him, and he had to do very little to get their attention. He was drinking, taking drugs. I mean, this just is a very common occurrence throughout his teenage years. Robert liked doing these activities in Central Park. Like, he would go to the park and smoke pot and drink and use drugs.
Oh, okay. Now, is 120 high on the IQ?
I think it's about average.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like average, maybe a little bit above average, but I mean, it's not like genius IQ.
But he's not dumb either.
Right.
If he would apply himself and all these
Yeah,
opportunities
he could probably do well.
that he had, if he had just worked really
And studied.
hard, he could be excelling in these and really taking a benefit of his mom's vision and honestly hard work. I mean, whether you think it's the right thing to do, she's trying really hard to prepare, it may open these doors for him.
Yeah, and set him up for success.
Yeah.
Yeah, network, the right people. It's going to land you a good college, a good job later in life. Bob, fresh from rehab and sober, noticed his son's problems because now he's sober and he knows exactly what addicts do.
Right.
So he's recognizing all of this addict behavior in his son.
Well, that's true. That's true. You cannot fool an addict.
But Phyllis, she remains in denial. Some parents of Robert's friends no longer allowed him in their home. Yet Phyllis kept saying he would straighten out soon, boys will be boys, and continued pushing her son to colleges like Dartmouth, Brown, Duke, or Columbia, all colleges with high admission standards, which her son did not meet. Phyllis thought she had pull with these elites who might help him get into some of these top schools.
I mean, that's like the best of the best. I mean, those are schools, even if your parents if you come from a family of money and stuff, you still got to have the academics to get into them.
Typically.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, these are cream of the crop schools. They're only taking students who have 14, 15, 1600 SAT scores.
Right.
4.0 GPAs. And even then, these students are waitlisted and don't get into these
Plenty
schools.
of people won't because there's just so many and it's so exclusive.
Neighbors gossiped about Phyllis's circumstances. She had expensive items. She hosted the Silver and Gold Ball along with Donald Trump.
Now, have you ever hosted any balls?
Several, Dylan.
I knew you have.
Several.
I thought you had.
Oh, actually, you know what, Dylan? I will have you know I worked on the Navy Ball Committee.
Of course you did.
Extensively.
I heard you were legendary.
Yes.
Yes.
So, yeah, she's hosting the Silver and Gold Ball. It's like this big charitable sort of event alongside Donald Trump, who at this time, I mean, he's a major real estate tycoon in New York.
Right.
Famous guy at the time. I mean, people don't know who he is now, but that's a joke.
Well, yeah, this is well before the 17 or 35 bankruptcies, right? I mean,
yet her husband had lost his job and was working as a delivery guy for a liquor store, living on tips. Some people thought her lavish Christmas decorations had actually been stolen by her son. Like her husband's making these liquor store deliveries right up until the moment they head out to this fancy ball.
okay. So what the people around them, it just doesn't add up. Her lifestyle compared to obviously the money that she's bringing into the household.
Yeah, like and I mentioned the Christmas decorations had like some high-end florist like come in and decorate her home for Christmas. And people are like, how can she afford that?
Like Fabergé ornaments.
That's like $4,000 worth of Christmas decorations.
And why would you do that? You know what I mean? If you truly, I mean, I don't know. But for her,
priorities, I reckon.
For Phyllis, it's all about appearances, outward appearances to everyone else.
Absolutely. On New Year's Eve, when Robert was 16, his apartment was burglarized with many of his mother's prized possessions stolen. Many assumed it was her son, who had earned quite a reputation as a thief. By now, Robert had transferred to another school, leaving York behind. A wealthy elderly family who employed Phyllis for some years before suddenly fired her. Later, it would be said that the woman was too elderly and sick to enjoy dining out at fine restaurants, but was pushed to do so by Phyllis.
So she could go along with her?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it seems like she's almost taking advantage of some of her patients.
Right.
Shopping trips, lunches,
financial
dining out.
abuse of the elderly.
Yeah.
Robert.
Yeah, exactly, Dylan.
Right.
Well, Robert attended graduation in 1984 despite not earning a diploma. He had not done enough work to graduate. His mother found Robert work on a yacht owned by a friend, but he was fired soon after when bottles of champagne and expensive liquors went missing. He went to summer school, though he mostly partied. Finally, he got into Boston University's School of Basic Studies. But true to form, Robert was partying, drinking, doing drugs, and not studying. By the midterm, he'd already been warned to make up his missing work. At Christmas, he told his family that he didn't like Boston University and didn't want to go back. Phyllis asked a friend if Robert could get into Oxford. I mean, this woman is delusional.
I mean, what the hell? So he had to downgrade to Boston U, which is a fairly prestigious,
Well, I mean, it's still a damn good school.
a high quality school anyway. It's especially on the state schools. And so, but he can't even, I mean, at what point do you say, my kid's some shit and have an honest conversation with them?
Oxford?
Well, he doesn't, he's not going to cut it. He's worked his way down.
And even if he
to
did get into
Boston U.
Oxford,
Yeah.
how's she going to pay for that?
Well, none of that matters because he's going to just jack it off and he's not going to take advantage of any of it.
Well, it turns out Robert was suspended from Boston University because of drugs found in his room. Robert had also stolen a roommate's credit card, running up large dinner bills. I mean, he's some shit.
He's a shitbird. He's a well-coiffed shitbird.
Exactly. By the end of 1984, Phyllis was so frustrated with her ungrateful son that she banished him to live in the basement. He would have to live in the dank, empty 2-bedroom apartment downstairs in the basement of their building until he got a job and paid his own way. After a few weeks, when Robert got the flu, but still no job, his mom let him move back into the family apartment. Robert wanted a high-paying job in television or the fashion industry. He told his mother maybe he could try modeling. She paid a ton of money to get his teeth perfect, but no agencies were interested. Instead, she decided to send him off to Hunter College. So that's a very reasonable career. Like, maybe I'll just be a model.
You know, I'd like to just get a very high-paying job in TV or something, or maybe fashion.
That's what you should do, Dylan.
Yeah. Well, now that I am,
I see no reason why you cannot go work for like Marchesa's design house or something.
Now that I do have an opportunity in my life to change career paths,
You're going into acting.
I think I should. I think I could be a model for plus size men.
Are you going to release your SoundCloud rap album?
It's already been produced.
Okay,
It's
cool.
being put together right now.
Nice. Dream big, babe.
And I just want a really high paying job in an industry I know nothing about. So yeah, I'm Robert. My first name is
America.
Robert. So yeah,
Yeah, I know. See, exactly. I mean, this is the land of opportunity, Dylan.
it's true.
His mother found him a job at a restaurant, but he showed up late, was strung out on drugs, and stole tips off the tables. Robert was copying names and credit card numbers from restaurant customers to pay for drugs, a scam that he would use to wire money through Western Union using the customers' credit cards.
He is just, and he's just like a full on thief. He don't mind like going in your pocket when you're not looking. He'll just any opportunity to take something, and for him to benefit, he'll steal from anybody, anywhere.
Yep. By fall of 1985, Robert's obsession with money and cocaine was proving to be a lot. At Hunter, he never went to class. He started freebasing. Now, Dylan, I don't know a lot about drugs. What exactly is freebasing? Is that smoking?
I'm not sure, but it was almost like the precursor to crack, freebasing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's smoking the cocaine in some form or fashion.
Okay.
It's a lot more potent, and goes away fast. But you'll always be chasing that high.
Is that when they have like the aluminum foil?
If you'll recall, freebasing was put forth or brought to our attention in New Jack City. If you remember that movie, when that building where they sold the drugs, people could stay there and do the drugs. Everybody's doing it. When Chris Rock's little skinny ass was smoking the, an iced tea, shaking him like, "Oh, you're gonna stop smoking the freebasing, man. I need you." And yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, I haven't seen that movie in
You never seen?
No,
Yeah.
it's been a really long time.
Okay.
I was going to say I haven't seen that movie in like years.
We'll have to watch it.
He would scam girls. He loved to scam girls, like because they thought he was pretty, so it was super easy to just steal from them. Unlock doors to their apartment. He would like go visit girls, hang out with them, then leave their doors unlocked. So while he's making out with these girls, friends could come in and steal valuables and just like wipe them out.
What the hell?
Doormen would buzz him into Park Avenue homes because they had recognized his name, and he'd take what he wanted. He stole thousands in jewelry, silver, fur coats, and electronics. Just right out of apartments because they let him in. I mean, it's like membership has advantages, Dylan.
Well, I guess. I mean, it seems like he's always out to take advantage of someone.
Absolutely.
So if he meets you, he's already trying to figure out how he can use you.
It was one night at a bar called Dorian's Red Handed that Jennifer Levin spotted this good-looking guy at the bar. His name was Robert Chambers, a friend informed her. Jennifer's friend said Robert had a hard life, was rumored to steal from his friends, and was a bit of a rascal. But Jennifer was intrigued.
Yeah, I mean, because nothing piques your interest like someone saying he's known to be a thief and just an all-around ne'er-do-well. But yeah, but something about him.
Well, let's talk about Jennifer Levin. She grew up in a small ranch house on Long Island. Her father had a small real estate firm, which was becoming successful. Jennifer had an older sister, Danielle, whom everyone called the Beauty. Jennifer was known more for her personality, often called a live wire by those who knew her. Jennifer loved playing dress up from an early age. She would strut around in her mother's high heels. By 1973, the Levins' marriage was on the rocks. Steve, her father, moved to Manhattan, while his wife Ellen moved to California with the girls. In California, Jennifer attended public school. Her father's business grew, and she would see him during holidays. He eventually did remarry, and Jennifer resented his new wife. Ellen had friends in the film industry and sometimes took her daughters to parties in the Hollywood Hills, where Jennifer would meet celebrities, like, for example, Chevy Chase was like one of the big celebrities that she met as a child, and she just thought that was like the coolest thing ever. And who wouldn't think so?
Well, yeah. I mean, that would be awesome.
In fall of 1979, Jennifer moved with her mother and sister back east. They moved to Manor Haven, which was near Port Washington. Back in New York, Jennifer made friends easily. When she entered junior high, she was pretty unhappy, though. She didn't like the John Philip Sousa school. Most of her other friends were going to a school called Weber, like in this community. She declared that she just didn't fit in. But soon enough, Jennifer was hanging out with the school's most popular clique. But she ended up having a falling out with her group of friends, and her grades started to slip. Jennifer abruptly decided that she was going to move into her dad's Soho loft apartment. Jennifer would later tell people her mother didn't really provide her with proper guidance. Jennifer enrolled in Baldwin, a private school, and her dad gave her a private telephone line, which was like a pretty big deal at that time. She embraced these different haircuts. She would like shave her hair kind of punk rock, like the sides. And, you know, she started dressing kind of in the early 80s new wave fashions. And she hoped her new friends in the city wouldn't label her as, quote, a bridge and tunnel, which was how city kids made fun of suburbanites.
Bridge and tunnel?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Because you either...
Oh, because you have to cross the bridge or come through the tunnel to get here.
Yeah.
You're not from
You've
here.
never heard that before?
No.
It's a pretty popular, like, saying, I think, in New York City.
Wow, that's what they're going to turn this place into. The people who work here are going to be bridge and tunnel people.
Probably.
That's pretty sad.
But there's nowhere for them to live or go.
Nope.
By 1982, Jennifer and her new friends were going to Studio 54 to party. It was still hard to get in, but Jennifer's association with children of the very wealthy allowed her entrance. To get in, you needed to wear fancy clothes and high heels and lots of makeup. You needed to look older. Jennifer's dad didn't like her going out late and implemented a few rules about school nights and such, but it didn't really matter. Jennifer's drinking a lot. Once she came home from Studio 54 so drunk that her father grounded the girl. At parties and some private parties that were held at these discos, there was no parental supervision in sight.
Could you imagine being some young, not even old enough to be there, teenager
15-year-old girl
in Studio 54, given that atmosphere and what was happening during that time?
No. I mean, it would be super fun.
It'd be super fun, but also you're putting yourself in a rather, possibly dangerous situation to be exploited or taken advantage of.
Well, Dylan, you mentioned that. The atmosphere at these nightclubs was all sex, booze, drugs, and rich kids.
Yeah.
Jennifer, like most of her friends, were dressing like Madonna. They were buying lace, which they layered over ripped jeans. They wore like mini skirts. They started shaving chunks of their hair. Some of them were dyeing their hair, bleaching it. She became obsessed with losing weight. Most of her friends were thin. Jennifer stood about 5'7" and weighed 140 pounds. She shunned meat, sticking to eating carrots, celery, and lettuce. Jennifer thought you had to be skinny if you really wanted to make it on the scene. Jennifer summered in Southampton with friends, staying in rental cottages. And this is by the time she's 16, she's staying the whole summer in Southampton. She starts working at a boutique. Her friends bragged about the kind of life they were living, saying, quote, "Girls in the Midwest read about our lives in 17 magazine and they wish they could be us." But I mean, it's true, They're like living a totally different life from the average teenager in America. Friends described Jennifer's parental role models as, quote, sad. Her mother, Ellen, was often drunk and wasted. She was kind of a friend more than a mother. Jennifer's dad and stepmother ignored her and then stayed on her constantly, making the girl feel like an intruder at the loft they shared together. At the end of her senior year, Jennifer contracted vaginal herpes and wrote about it extensively in her diary, asking, quote, "Why are our bodies so disgusting?" And I mention this because later it's going to come into play.
Okay.
Robert Chambers had seen Jennifer around. He confided in her friend Betsy that he thought Jennifer was the best-looking girl in town. He called her, quote, "the most." Though Robert had a girlfriend, he wanted to speak to Jennifer. During the summer of 1986, Jennifer had sex with Robert. She couldn't keep the news to herself and shared it with all of her friends. It was only 2 weeks after she had graduated from high school, and things were going as she had hoped. They hooked up at the apartment he shared with his mother. Now, Robert, at this time, was mostly hanging out in his room. not working, doing drugs, just hanging out at home. He spends a lot of time dialing porno hotlines
Okay.
and watching TV, while Phyllis pressured him to find work. Jennifer spent the summer working at a place called Flutie's, saving her paychecks for college in the fall. Jennifer had other flings, but was thrilled when Robert called her. Now, Jennifer rarely uses birth control. She said the pills made her feel sick, and a diaphragm was inconvenient. And all of this is going to come out later. That's why I'm bringing it up. Because there's going to be some slut shaming in this story.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Friends let Jennifer and Robert use their apartments to hook up. And because if you remember, after all, Robert has a girlfriend.
So he's on the DL.
Yeah.
Okay.
His mother was strict, so they couldn't go to his mom's house. Jennifer told her friend, quote, "He's the best person I ever slept with in my entire life."
Bold statement.
Well, she's a kid.
And that's what happens.
So I'm like, hun, you don't even know.
They're easily impressed.
You're a child.
You know?
Robert was using drugs and drinking again. Jennifer's friend thought, that it was kind of weird, and she sort of chalked it up to like, okay, well, Jennifer's just naive and she doesn't really know anything about good sex. So, like, oh, bless it. Now, other friends had knowledge of Robert's sexual failings. On more than one occasion, other women had reported that he had sexual impotency.
Well, yeah, especially with the heavy drug use, you know what I mean? That's very likely a side effect of that, you know?
But Jennifer assured her friends it wasn't with her and that Robert had given her a very first orgasm. Now, Jennifer told them it was casual, but she seemed really taken with him. So when folks would ask, so are you guys like a couple? She'd be like, oh, no. It's nothing serious. But then she just talked about him.
We're just friends with benefits.
Like almost obsessively. Asking people, have you seen him? Where is he? What's he been up to? Like, oh, I wish he would call me. That kind of thing. Robert was showing off a beautiful blonde girlfriend around the end of the summer. Jennifer had gone to visit some friends in California, and people wondered how Robert landed such gorgeous girlfriends when he really hadn't done anything since high school. Like all the other guys are like, he's a loser. He's not going to college. He doesn't have a job.
Lives in his mom's apartment.
Yeah, and he's kind of scuzzy, he's gross and lives kind of this gross thieving lifestyle, but always has these really pretty girlfriends.
Well, maybe he gives them the bad boy vibe.
Well, other guys chalked it up to, well, it must just be his good looks.
Oh, well, if you're handsome, that's the one thing.
Is that how you got all the ladies?
No, I'm a hard worker, They can count on me. I'm reliable. But, I think my looks are secondary to my other skills.
No, I think you have a hot body.
I mean, I'm a great lover. I'm a very accomplished lover.
Yeah.
So once they've been subjected to that,
obviously. You'll read them a sonnet.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you don't even have to read it. You recite it from memory.
Of course.
Because you're quite suave.
I'm very suave. Rico actually asked me if he could use that name, Rico Suave, and I told him go ahead. It really doesn't matter to me. I can cook. Really,
and you're
really
a phenomenal dancer. Don't forget that part.
I'm not a phenomenal dancer. That's a lie. The rest of this has been the truth.
You're like Justin Timberlake, and you bring sexy back.
And then, so I didn't have to bring it back because sexy never left for me.
It didn't?
Yeah. And I'm funny. So, you get a girl laughing, man. You're already, you're 2/3 of the way there.
It's true.
Yeah, you laugh them right out of their underwear.
Because they
I was gonna say panties.
Because they pee themselves with laughter, and then they have to go get fresh
change.
Clothes. Yeah,
and then you catch them right in the middle of change, and you're like, yeah.
Oh, God. What's wrong with you?
I'm sorry. There's probably some stuff in there.
Maybe it's not even that you're funny. Maybe you're just dating middle-aged women who've had kids, and we just
Well, there's
we
that.
Have bladder problems.
Hey, I can wait a kid out. I can be like, yeah, show me some more somersaults, you little fucker, so you get tired. Run them around the yard for a while.
See, that sounded creepy and inappropriate. Like you were trying to tire the kid out for some particular reason that's not okay.
So I could sex his mama up.
Okay, so you need to clarify.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
No.
Are you going to get one of those early Kyler hats that says like MILF Hunter
Yeah.
on it?
Well, no, yeah, that's so I can have sex with the child's mother, the clean, innocent part.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, look, people, bear with me. I have antihistamines, and I think it's reacting with the cough
I think we
syrup.
both do.
So let's just continue forward, Heather.
I'm actually surprised I've made it through this episode without like coughing a whole
Oh,
bunch.
I've had to cough the whole time. I'm just holding it back.
Jennifer was leaving for Boston soon. As summer dwindled, she wanted to spend more time with friends, even blowing off her dad, who had requested that they were able to spend some more time together because she's going to go to college up in Boston. It was August 26th of 1986. Robert confided in a friend outside of Dorian's nightclub that he was depressed. He said, quote, "I've got nothing, no job, no money, and I've been falling off the wagon." His friend advised Robert to go home, saying, "You're guaranteed to fall off the wagon if you stay here or go inside the bar." But Robert told him he wanted to hang out. So, not good, right?
Well, no, and I guess he's finally realizing that he hasn't done anything with his life. You know, it doesn't surprise me that you may be feeling depressed.
Jennifer and her friends arrived at Dorian's red-handed just after midnight. When she spotted Robert, she started telling him about her California trip, but he ignored her. Jennifer was pretty hurt by this. Like, she's happy to see him. She's missed him.
Probably been thinking about him since he's been gone.
Well, yeah, she's been telling everybody about him, and she's been thinking about him this whole time, and everything up until this point had been good between them.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, he's giving her the cold shoulder.
Devastating.
Jennifer then ordered a drink, and she came back, and she sat down this time at his table. But he just gets up and leaves, and she's really embarrassed. I mean, this is a pretty jerky move.
No, it's a dick move, and I think possibly he's in a mood himself, and he's just taking it out on her.
Absolutely, Dawn. After all summer of bragging to her friends about Robert and like how awesome things were between them, now he was treating her badly, and everyone's there watching it happen.
Right.
She finally approached him and told him, "You're the best sex I ever had." Because she thought, well, maybe he doesn't know that I like him, and I need to like let him know
Okay.
that like I'm really into him. You know, maybe he thinks she blew me off. She went to California. She's not that into me. And she kind of discussed it with one of her friends who was like, well, you know, I mean, if you want to tell him that. So she tells him that, and he coldly says to her, "You shouldn't have said that." Just treats her terribly. Now, Jennifer and Robert seem to be engaged in a deep conversation when another girl comes over and starts shouting at him. He was supposed to meet her. He showed up an hour late, and now he's flirting with this Jennifer girl. So Robert blames Jennifer for coming over to speak to him. And he's like, you know, it's her fault. I'm not trying to talk to her. She comes over, and now you're yelling at me. And so he just walks away from both women. Like, I'm done with both of y'all.
So this is all happening in a very public setting.
Yes.
Kind of everyone in the know is like, oh my God, can you believe this is happening? And
Yeah.
watching.
So at this point, Jennifer sends a friend with a message asking Robert to meet her outside so they could talk. But he refuses.
What's the 5th grade or some shit? She's passing notes?
Well, at this point, I mean, I hate to say it. If I were Jennifer's friend, I would say, girl, you're being pathetic. Let it go. He's a shit. You can do better.
Well,
this
here's-
is when you need the friend to be like, girl, you can do better than this.
Well, now that
He's a broke, jobless loser.
Yeah, I mean, now that the new smell's worn off, and you're kind of you're seeing a side of him maybe you had never seen before towards you, and yeah, as a friend, you should be like, he's a loser.
Yeah, don't
He
be
has-
needy. Don't be a stage 5 clinger.
Right.
You know, he's just not that into you. It's time.
Right.
It's time to just move on. Like, don't let him treat you badly in this public setting.
Yeah, and for one, let's just stop the damage for the moment. Sleep on it, and maybe see what happens later.
Well,
But-
that's what I would have advised my
Right.
friend at the time. Now, Jennifer thought everyone who left Dorian's by clothes paired up. So maybe if Robert was alone, he would leave with her.
I mean, I don't want to use the word pathetic, but this is not. You should have more respect for yourself than that. Someone should want to be with you, and if they don't, okay, fine, so be it. There's someone else who will want to be with me. who maybe has a job, who maybe is not a thief
You're keeping it 100, Dylan.
or on drugs. You know, how far can a pretty face get you, really? A pretty face don't pay a lot, Bill Bud.
Exactly. Right? Unless it's yours. You sexy man.
Yes, I do have a particular arrangement with the utilities lady in our town.
I bet you do.
I just smile at her and she pays my lot. It pays my light
Gosh,
bill.
I wish, because our light bill through the winter has been outrageous. Okay, so by the time the bar was closing at 4 a.m., Robert came over to her. So Jennifer's thinking the plan worked.
Yeah.
Around 4:30 a.m., Jennifer left the bar with Robert, assuring friends she would call them later. Around 5 a.m., a woman named Pat Riley got on her racing bike for morning exercise. She was just passing behind the MoMA, which is like the modern art museum in New York, around 6, when something caught her eye. Now, at first, she thought it was a bag lady, and this is her words, a bag lady asleep. But realizing it wasn't a homeless person, she braked the bike and walked over. The body of a naked young woman with clothes bunched up around her was lying motionless. The woman was obviously dead. Pat rode to the nearest phone to call for help. Now, this is a terrible thing to find early in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shock. It's just something you could never imagine.
And this poor victim, I mean, I can only imagine what would be racing through your head.
Right.
Now, it's around 6:15 when a patrol officer who was in charge of park security, because this museum is backing up against the park, Central Park.
Okay.
And he gets a woman down call on 81st and East Drive. Under a tree, he could make out something on the ground. Spectators had started to gather around. Now, as the police officer gets closer, he saw bruising on the victim's neck. She had no pulse. He took a sheet of brown wrapping paper from the trunk of his patrol car to try to give the victim some privacy, because by now there are even more onlookers starting to gather around, because you got a lot of folks out early in the morning exercising in the park.
Right. And anyone who sees even one or two people standing there, that crowd's just going to grow, because once you do realize what it is, it's so out of the ordinary, you know, and we always, for whatever reason, have that, you know, us true crime fans today in the Victorian era, we've always been compelled to kind of look at this type of thing.
We all like to rubberneck.
Right.
Now, it was around 6:30 a.m. that Jennifer's good friend Alexandra, she'd actually been out at the bar the night before with Alexandra, and her friend had promised she would leave the key under the mat for Jennifer. Like, if things don't work out with Robert or whatever, you can always come to my place and spend the night. She woke up and realized that Jennifer hadn't made it to the apartment, but she wasn't worried, assuming maybe her friend had forgotten about the key or that she had gone to Robert's place. Alexandra rushed the boy who had stayed over out of the house, and she headed to the DMV because she needed to get a driver's permit. By 8 a.m., New York Newsday had gotten information from the NYPD about a murder. A white woman murdered in Central Park would definitely sell newspapers.
Well, yeah, that's a salacious story.
The victim had been strangled. Her face was dirty, as if she'd been pushed into the ground. Her left eye was swollen. She had bite marks around her nipples, and it appeared she had tried to resist her attacker. She was most likely raped. Her breasts and pubic area were exposed. They saw the girl's earlobes stretched out, figuring she had on earrings, and so they started searching for those. About 45 feet north of the body, they found a pair of soiled underwear. And then a few feet away from that, they found another pair.
What?
Yeah. There were, they also found a lipstick case and a black hair bow. The detectives theorized her body had been under the tree where the first pair of underwear were found, and that she'd been dragged about 45 feet away to where the body was lying.
Okay.
Because it appeared there were drag marks. She had like dirt caked, to her body.
So attacked over here.
Yeah.
And then drug over here and maybe attacked more.
Possibly.
Okay.
Yeah. Inside the girl's jean jacket was a check stub from Flutie's with the name Jennifer Levin, who lived at a Soho address. There were free passes to stylish nightclubs, half of a $1 bill, along with some other identification pieces. The learner's permit said that she was born in 1968. Yet there was a mini diploma, like a high school diploma, one of those little tiny ones that you can get, with the date 1964, which police surmised was used to buy drinks at bars. It was a fake diploma.
Oh, okay. So she's using it as a fake ID to get in places.
Yeah. Steve Levin was at work in his office when officers arrived with some terrible news about his daughter. A coroner had already examined Jennifer, determining the manner of death was strangulation homicide. Her friend Alexandra was now starting to be worried because Jennifer still hadn't arrived at the apartment, and so she phoned her friend's private line because she's already gone to the DMV. She's come back, and she's like, where's Jennifer?
Now she's starting to get worried.
So she calls Jennifer's private phone line. Steve answers and demands to know what happened to his daughter the night before. Now, at this point, police get on the phone, and they say they want to speak to her, and they're going to come over soon. Alexandra called their other friend Betsy to ask what had happened, and Betsy told her that Jennifer had left the bar with Robert Chambers.
Oh, wow.
Alexandra found Robert's phone number in Jennifer's diary, which had been left at her apartment, and she called him. Now, Phyllis answers the phone. Robert said that Jennifer left him after Dorian's, and she was planning to go see an ex-boyfriend, a guy named Brock. Police showed up at Alexandra's, and they took Jennifer's diary, and then they told her, like, do not call anyone else. They told her that Steve would have to tell her what had happened, that they were not at liberty to say what had happened to her friend.
Okay.
And that it would be up to Jennifer's dad to let her know. So Robert's face on this particular morning is very scratched. And Phyllis claimed a cat scratched him when a housekeeper asked what had happened. Later, Phyllis and this housekeeper went to get some hamburgers for lunch, and Philip told the housekeeper that Robert had decided to go to Colombia in the fall.
Oh, yeah.
Because she's still having these
delusions about him.
Yes, these fanciful ideas.
Well, I mean, he should do Columbia because he's basically done the other 15 or 14 top schools in the nation.
Like he's even going to get into Columbia. Like your son should probably start maybe at a community college if he could even get into community college. And they accept everyone. So yeah, he's just, you know what, Dylan? I didn't tell you, but I'm going to Harvard this fall.
Oh, that's funny because I've already been there. I'm already started.
Oh, cool.
So we can just hang out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just pick whatever school you want and you just go.
I'm just going to Harvard.
It's cool. I don't know who's going to pay for it, but I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, and the cool thing is you don't even have to have the grades to get in.
Now, after lunch, detectives show up at Phyllis's apartment asking to speak to her son. Now, at first, she thought they meant her ex-husband, but soon realizes that no, they want to talk to Robert, not Bob. She didn't budge to get him and demands to know what they want. Police told her they were investigating a missing girl. They were not yet using the word dead.
So the cops are trying to approach this in a way so they can get all the people and the information before the word
They
really
want to
spreads.
see everyone's reaction.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's pretty smart on their part.
It is. So 6'4", 200-pound Robert came skulking into the room to speak with police. So he's a big dude. He's not a small guy.
Right.
And you got to think this is up against Jennifer, who's 5'7", and probably at this point weighs, maybe 125, 130 pounds.
Right.
Like she's a small girl and she's, much smaller than he is. Robert said he did know Jennifer and offered to get his phone book so that the officers could maybe locate some of her friends. Robert had these scratches on his face. Jennifer had bitten his fingers and his right hand was still aching at this point.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good.
So at first, Robert had thought what had happened in the park was a dream, but now he's starting to remember that it was real. Chambers went to the police station for an interview. Noticing the wounds, officers decided that it was probably time to read him Miranda rights before they start the interview because they are seeing he has injuries.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's one of the most prominent things in an investigation like this. You see it, you have a victim, and you can tell that they likely fought, And then when you see someone you're investigating as a possible perpetrator and they have wounds, I mean, I need you to explain how, let alone on the face and stuff. I mean, I think that is very, I mean, that would, if I was the investigator, I would be like, wow, we really got to take a hard look at this guy.
Robert admitted that he did know Jennifer. They had sex earlier in the summer and that he had seen her out at Dorian's red-handed the night before. He said she was, quote, floating around talking to different people. When he left, Jennifer was in the vestibule saying she was going across the street to the Korean deli to buy cigarettes. Robert suggested that Jennifer then went to see her ex-boyfriend, Brock Pernice. He received the scratches from a cat.
Yeah.
This is what he's claiming.
Yeah, the cat just scratched me in the face, dude.
And the bite marks on his fingers were actually from an electric sander because he had been painting for a neighbor.
I bet they're looking at him like, we don't believe a damn word
And the
you're
sander
saying.
just happened to get away and bite his fingers.
Yeah,
like,
it bit my fingers.
Because I'm sorry, but bite marks are not the same as what an electric sander that has,
No, you're talking in
rubbed your hand is going to look like.
An abrasion compared to a bite. That's not, those wounds are going to look very different.
But Robert was very cool. Not an ounce of nervousness speaking to police. The detective was certain Robert had killed Jennifer, but saw that this guy's not going to crack. Like, he is cool as a cucumber.
Right.
Phyllis, who was anxious that her son's interview was taking a long time, called the owner of Dorian's Red-Handed to ask if he knew anything about what was going on. The owner, Jack Dorian, told her the news that a woman had been murdered in Central Park. Jennifer's grandfather and uncle went to the morgue to ID her body. Now, despite interrogating Robert for hours, he didn't seem to change his story, insisting that the cat scratched him. However, Jennifer's friend Betsy told police that she had seen Jennifer leave with Robert heading toward 86th Street. Betsy also confirmed that Jennifer did not smoke, and so that it was not possible that she had left for this Korean deli to buy cigarettes, as Robert had stated.
That she did not smoke?
Yeah, she was like, Jennifer does not smoke. There's no way she would have been crossing the street to buy cigarettes.
Well, there's no reason for you to buy cigarettes if you don't smoke. And another thing, witnesses could say he doesn't have, the night before he didn't have these scratches or this wound on his hand.
Well, there's that. Around 7 p.m., Jennifer's death had made the news broadcast, the TV news broadcast. And detectives informed Robert that what they had told him previously, that she was a missing person, was not exactly true, that she had been murdered, that she was found dead.
Okay.
So at this point, Robert held his head in his hands and started asking, why? How?
Oh, my God.
Finally, a detective named Sheehan, who had known Bob Chambers, went to speak with his son. And this guy Sheehan, like, he was a cop, but his family had owned a bar where Bob Chambers had, often was drinking and hanging out. So he knew Bob personally. But he is also this really good detective, and he is adept at getting confessions from folks. So they bring him in. And after a few minutes, Robert admitted to Detective Sheehan for the first time that he had indeed walked away with Jennifer. Sheehan pressed him about the scratches, why the girl had no panties on, and her friends say, you left with her. So come on, Rob. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe you just weren't in the right frame of mind. It could happen to any of us. We've all been there.
Well, yeah, the old maybe you didn't mean to do it, but you'll be better off telling us now so you don't look like a cold-blooded killer, or maybe we can help you. We can talk to the prosecutor for you. That's a very, very, very popular tactic that police use.
Yeah. Sheehan called for a medical examiner to come check Robert's scratches to determine if a cat or a person had given those scratches to him. When police told him that this medical examiner was coming back to check his wounds, Robert said, well, I did get those from Jennifer.
Oh, yeah, by the way.
Yeah.
She scratched me on the face right before she went across the street to get the pack of cigarettes. She does not smoke.
Now admitting he had been wounded by the dead girl, police were champing at the bit. Robert claimed it had been in front of a donut shop near 86th Street and Park Avenue. The detectives told Robert his story seemed far-fetched. Finally, using the old quote, "You'll feel better if you get this off your chest" line, Robert admitted that he did go to Central Park with Jennifer.
And I applaud you for saying champing at the bit instead of chomping.
According to Robert, who was very worried what his mother would think, he told police that he sat with Jennifer on a park bench. So here this guy is just so worried about his mom. Well, I don't want my mom to know what I did. I can't let her know what's going on.
Well, that sounds about right. Because he's a goober.
He's a pussy.
He is a fucking pussy. Let's just go ahead and say it in stark words. Blatant.
So they sit on this park bench. Now, this is all according to Robert. And his story is like the most ridiculous fucking thing you're going to hear.
Wait, he was sanding with a belt sander the park bench. It's the middle of the night.
Yes.
We don't know how he's even getting power out there. Mm-hmm. And there's this cat. The cat seems like one of those.
It escaped from the Bronx Zoo.
A street
and
tough.
It wasn't just a cat, Dylan. It was a tiger.
It was a cat in like a little leather jacket and like smoking Lucky Strikes.
And it wants to start a dance off rival, beat it style gang fight. With
it has a tiny little switchblade.
Yeah, that's actually a comb.
Yeah, of course it's a comb.
Because we find out he's like a Maine Coon.
Man,
very fluffy.
I had one of those switchblade combs when I was a kid, and that was the shit.
I'm going to get you one for your birthday.
Thing. Okay.
Dylan's birthday is coming up at the end of the month. He needs a switchblade comb. Okay, so he's finally admitting, I sat with her on a park bench. He says that Jennifer wanted to be with him. That she's telling him, I like you. I want to be with you. Why can't we be together? And that Robert explains that he is no longer interested in her. According to Robert, Jennifer got angry and scratched his face. Then she went to the bathroom behind him on the ground.
Okay.
So she goes to take a little pee-pee.
She cops a squat.
Right? And that all of a sudden, she attacks him.
Ah.
She is using her underwear to try and tie up his hands.
What?
Yeah.
I thought he was going to say she was using it like a garrote around his throat from behind.
I mean, if she was smart, she would have. No, so now this is Robert's version of, I'm telling you, it is just the most.
This 6'4", 200+ pound guy.
Yeah.
And this is what is happening to him. Poor guy.
Yeah. So she's trying to tie his hands up.
With her underwear.
Now, at first, Robert thinks this is a joke. But then she tackles him on the ground, putting her naked ass on his chest.
Ah.
She then tries to unbuckle his pants. She starts hurting him, Robert said, grabbing his groin and scratching his scrotum and pulling and tugging at his weenie.
I could never imagine this happening in real life. This sounds like the most outlandish.
So now she's trying to sexually assault him.
Right.
Right?
She's going to take it.
And that's when he pulls her off. But when he gets her onto the ground, she's not answering him. And so police are like, okay, well, it sounds like he's kind of confessing. I mean, he's admitting he grabs her and throws her to the ground. At that point, she's not answering him when he says her name.
Right. But this was all self-defense.
Yes, because he's being sexually assaulted by this sex-crazed woman who can't resist him.
Right.
I mean,
once he freed himself from the undergarment bonds that were about his hands. I mean, what the fuck, dude?
Yeah.
Now, this is just a poor attempt for him to twist this because he's already slowly put himself with her in the park. And so at this point, what can he say, honestly?
Although he was confessing, he didn't really give up much information. There is no accidental way to manually strangle someone, detectives noted. You have to hold on to a person's throat for a long time to cut off their air supply. So Robert is still lying, and they know this.
Right. It takes minutes and minutes to manually strangle someone.
Now, while Robert is being interviewed by police, interrogated, Phyllis has taken Robert's clothes to her employer's house and asked her friend, the housekeeper. Remember, the housekeeper had come over and was hanging out. They're kind of buddies. She asked this woman to wash these clothes.
The clothes from that night.
Yeah, which was a white mesh baseball shirt. And the housekeeper notes it's filthy with dirt and bloodstains.
Yeah, I'd be like, I don't think I'm going to wash this for you.
Yeah. So videotaping confessions was still considered new at the time. Robert seemed to poise himself for the camera. He began retelling the story of how Jennifer was sexually assaulting him and how he had grabbed her and thrown her off. She didn't move, and then that's when he went home. Robert said he thought it was all a dream. Now, the press had a field day blaming Jennifer for her own death once this news comes out.
I want to say how, but I know.
They take to slut-shaming her times 100. They talk about how she had a boyfriend in addition to Robert Chambers. She had slept with Robert on more than one occasion. They had rough sex, according to Robert Chambers. Jennifer was someone who had put herself in harm's way. The press painted it as the Preppy Murder, noting Robert's education, social status, and how handsome he was.
Well, I don't understand what any of those things they're saying about Jennifer would still, like, mean that she should be killed. Who cares if she has 6 boyfriends or whatever? None of that matters. This piece of shit attacked her and killed her.
Do you like I'm playing footsie with you under the podcast
Yes.
tables? Okay. So arraigned on second-degree murder charges, Robert Chambers' case goes to trial. His lawyer, Jack Littman, concocted a defense to make Jennifer Levin look promiscuous and lacking in character. Littman was a sought-after criminal defense attorney in the city. As an assistant district attorney, he'd closed 40 cases and lost only one. During arraignment, Littman told the judge that Robert didn't mean to hurt Miss Levin, and it was merely an accident. But the judge didn't release the young man and sent him back to jail. Like, wouldn't give him bail, wouldn't release him yet. So friends of Jennifer, because remember, they run in the same circles, so they have some of the same friends.
Right.
So friends of both Jennifer and Robert rallied around him as he was moved to Rikers. One girl named Nora Bray said, quote, "There's nothing we can do for Jennifer. We have to fight now for Robert's rights." They praised Robert for being such a great guy, so generous, so considerate. But in a short time standing up for Robert, it kind of meant putting down Jennifer. So it went from like, well, we're friends with both of them, to we have to stand up for Robert, to, well, you know, Jennifer was this way, and so she probably deserved it. I mean, who thinks like that?
Dumbest state. Well, Jennifer's dead because Robert killed her. But we should do what we can to help him out because he's, you know, not dead because nobody killed him. That's the dumbest shit I've ever heard before in my life.
They said she was wild, an exhibitionist. She carried handcuffs on dates. She posed nude for photographs. And they said the bite marks on Jennifer's breast weren't from Robert, but they were from other guys she'd indulged in rough sex play with.
And how in the world would they know that?
Right, exactly. Steve Levin would later say reading the horrible things written about his daughter in the newspaper made him question his relationship with her and wonder if he knew her at all. He doubted his perception of his own child. Jennifer was the kind of girl who would walk away from a guy who didn't like her and that she had good self-esteem. Steve just couldn't imagine her chasing after a boy who had rejected her. So hearing these stories about the night at the bar and how Jennifer kept trying to pursue Robert, he couldn't believe it. He's like, this doesn't seem like my daughter.
Right.
One of her friends, Margaret, said after viewing Jennifer's abused body at the wake, she got so angry that she called up Nora Bray, telling her, "You're a bitch and a cunt for what you said about Jennifer and how you want to support Robert." She's like, "I've seen my friend. I know what she looks like. How dare you?" Margaret knew Robert's story about not harming Jennifer had been bullshit when she had seen her friend's swollen eye and the dark bruising that could not be hidden by mortician's makeup.
Because she knows when they walked away, when she left that night, she wasn't in that condition.
Yes.
And that was the only person she was with.
800 people attended Jennifer's funeral service. Linda Fairstein was tasked with trying the case. She had worked with a sex crimes unit, but had never tried a homicide case. So she's going to be the prosecutor. She had tried 30 rape cases and had only lost 2.
Wow.
Fairstein was known as having an uncanny ability to communicate the sufferings of victims to a jury. The motive eluded her, though. It might surface later, but there seemed to be no reason for Robert Chambers to kill Jennifer Levin, to beat her, and to murder the girl with his bare hands. A black judge named Howard Bell was assigned to the case. Now, some people didn't like him. His nickname was Ding Dong Bell. Others thought he was a gentle man, fair and hardworking. Bell had received a lot of discrimination as a black man in a judge's position, so the opinions might have been swayed as far as what kind of judge he was.
So the Ding Dong Bell, they saying he's dumb?
I'm not really sure. They just didn't like him.
Okay.
I think some of them thought he was kind of an asshole. At the Bell hearing, Littman, Robert's attorney, handed over 40 letters of support from Chambers' friends, teachers, and priests. They painted him as a trustworthy, kind, compassionate young man. Fairstein, however, had checked into Chambers' background and knew him to be a drug user and a petty thief. There were police files on his burglaries. She declared, quote, Robert Chambers is a thug and a murderer. She strongly suspected many of the letter writers had not known Robert since he was a young boy, particularly some of the church officials who had written on his behalf. Bail was finally set at about $150,000, which Littman said was too much money. Jack Dorian, the owner of the bar, Dorian's Red-Handed, put up his $600,000 townhouse as collateral. And when he called to tell Steve Levin, because he was friends with Steve Levin and knew Jennifer, and he called to tell him, look, I'm going to put my townhouse up for this guy, Steve Levin hung up on him.
Well, yeah, why wouldn't you? Screw you, dude.
Robert was released into the care of Monsignor Leonard, a Catholic priest who would be responsible for making sure that Chambers showed up to court. And he's going to have to go live with the Monsignor. Some higher-ups within the New York Catholic Church were not happy with how some of the priests had helped obtain Robert's release. Members of the city's Jewish community had written angry letters calling Robert a, quote, Jew killer. Some Catholics felt this was potentially inflaming. One cardinal wrote a letter expressing his feelings about the church being viewed as anti-Semitic.
Was Jennifer Jewish?
She was.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Her last name's Levin.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I mean.
Well, I mean, you know.
Yes.
I try to keep an open mind.
But yes, she was Jewish. Now, the defense had to prove that Robert had only held onto Jennifer's neck for just a few seconds. There was no way for either side to prove the exact time Jennifer had been throttled, whether it had been for like 5 seconds or for 20 minutes.
Right.
Right? Any expert opinion could easily cancel the other side's expert opinion. Fairstein had no motive, which was hard as a prosecutor. She knew jurors would want a motive. That just a random killing for no reason was kind of difficult for a lot of jurors to accept.
Well, yeah, that's just true for any of us. We need a reason, even if we don't think it's a dumb reason, or, you know, we just, because you can't believe someone did this to someone, so you need a reason.
Littman had no witnesses to prove Robert's story that Jennifer was sexually aggressive, either in the park or in general, because no one else had come forward with this information.
No one had seen her acting in a certain way to him or anything like that.
Well, and none of her previous partners had experienced anything like this.
She hadn't tied anyone else up with her underwear and attacked them.
No.
Okay.
Littman tried to get Fairstein to drop the charges down to manslaughter, telling her, quote, come on, you know this isn't a murder case, but she wouldn't bite. Fairstein knew the pictures of Jennifer lying naked in the park were impactful. The bruising, the dirt smeared on her face, the way he'd just left her naked and exposed. She was hopeful the jury would see it that way. Littman demanded to see Jennifer's diary, which he'd heard contained sexual acts that were kinky and aggressive, a list of lovers, and erotic symbols next to the names as she rated her partner's performances.
Oh, well, she had like a scale.
This is what this is what he's heard
About the diary.
about this diary.
So he wants, the defense wants the diary put forth as evidence.
Yes.
Okay.
Fairstein said there wasn't a sex diary. There was a date book, but nothing chronicling Jennifer's sex life. Now, she did have like some notes she had made in there, but it wasn't like a diary per se. The journal had been given back to Steve Levin, so now Littman would need to subpoena him. And if Littman dragged the book away from a grieving father, she knew he would look like a monster, which works for her.
Right.
Now, he decided to hand deliver this subpoena himself just before Thanksgiving to Jennifer's dad.
Might not be a good idea.
Yeah. A theory surfaced that the motive for Robert killing Jennifer was robbery. Detectives had seen her earrings appeared to be missing because remember they said it almost looked like her earlobes had been sort of stretched out a
Right,
little
like
bit.
somebody jerked her earrings out.
Yeah. Now, photographs from the night in question surfaced, and they showed Jennifer had been wearing some fake diamond studs at Dorian's the night in question.
So
these photos, she's wearing these fake diamond earrings. And these photos were all over the news.
And a stud is not something that is as likely to get ripped out in a struggle as like a big hoop earring.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like someone took those out
And
intentionally.
they are fake diamonds, but Chambers doesn't know they're fake.
But
he might assume that she's really got a 1 or 2 carat pair of diamond studs in her ears.
Right.
Because so many of their friends did. Right? Fairstein was livid that this theft theory had started to leak to the press. She had meant to produce it at trial. So she had planned to tease the suggestion to jurors because she didn't know for 100% this was true. But she had hoped to kind of mention this to the jurors.
Well, it's like you can't unring a bell. Once you
Right.
put it out there, they could think about it.
Well, the Levins decided to fight the subpoena, feeling there was nothing in their daughter's journal that was relevant to the case. They petitioned the judge to squash the diary subpoena, but he ordered the Levins produce the diary. He was going to read it, and then he would decide. The judge would decide its relevance to the case.
Well, I think that's a fair way to approach it as a judge, honestly.
The prosecution had trouble getting Robert's friends to cooperate. They didn't want to talk. Most were hiding drug use, robberies, credit card scams, and then these parents were angry that their children were being dragged into the case. Then, after the new year, Fairstein learned that Robert had been smoking dope at a New Year's Eve party. Judge Bell ruled the diary didn't need to be handed over to the defense. The defense was getting bad press for trying to drag a victim's name through the mud. The American Lawyer magazine called out the lawyer Littman by name, talking about, like, what a shit move this was.
Really?
Yeah. Like, you're re-victimizing this girl's family. You're trying to paint, you're
with
slut-shaming her.
The diary and all that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like what could have been gained by bringing the diary in and introducing it as evidence is being lost by public opinion or the appearance of you like you're going after the victim's family.
Robert spent the following spring and summer working odd jobs and dating wealthy girls. Now, even with these charges pending, these socialite girls are flocking to him.
I don't know.
Would you go out with a man that was on trial for possibly killing someone?
No.
Yeah. That's
Well,
crazy to me.
I would, I don't understand that. Well, it's just no different than people who are being convicted and in jail for some horrible shit. And then, someone marries them online or some shit,
Fall passed without Robert going to trial. Jury selection was scheduled to begin in late October. Then relatives of a neighbor whom Robert had been working for accused him of stealing. He had allegedly bilked an elderly neighbor out of nearly $7,000 for work. He had forged her name on checks to pay for this work he had supposedly been doing, like these odd jobs. By December 14th, the final juror was picked. 4 women and 8 men were chosen. Just after the new year, 1988, Robert would go to trial. The same night, Melissa Bushell threw a party. She invited Robert. The girls were wearing lingerie and pajamas and decided to make a movie because someone had like a new video camera. And you got to remember this was the 80s, so.
Well, it's so cool if you came around someone that had a video camera,
A video camera, very fancy. Robert joined the female guests. Many of the skits they filmed were Robert recreating like these sadomasochistic sort of scenes and crafting these just very off-putting skits.
sounds to be in, at the very least, poor taste given all the circumstances.
Yeah, like he would pretend he was going to sexually assault these women, and then he would say things to them like, I'll just say you're lying and people will believe me, to the girls on film.
Ha oh, I'm fake choking you.
Okay, here's the thing that really does not make Robert look like a good guy, Dylan. He takes a Barbie doll and he pops off its head, saying to the camera, "Oops, I think I've killed it." Some of the girls who'd been Jennifer's friends squeal with laughter on the video. Now, eventually, Melissa would hand over this tape to a current affair for $10,000. And it is going to make the rounds.
What a moron he is.
Yeah. January 4th of 1988, the trial finally begins. Shawn Koval, Robert's girlfriend, appears at the trial, the press snapping photos of her. So he's already got like a new girlfriend by trial.
Yeah, I mean, you know.
And this girlfriend, Shawn, will stick by him throughout. We'll talk more about it in a minute. Blow-ups of Jennifer's last photos in the park, dead, were shown to the jurors with much objection from Littman. Fairstein felt the photos spoke for themselves. People were angry that Jennifer's use of diet pills was allowed at the hearing, at the trial, but not discussions of Robert's cocaine addiction.
What does that have to do with anything?
Right? The prosecution called a witness, Dr. Gerber, an internal specialist who had been jogging at the park at the time of the crime, to the stand. Now, this man described that he had seen a person who appeared to be a male straddling someone who appeared to be lying on the ground. The male was shaking the person. About 15 minutes later, because he's jogging by, he returns and he witnesses the same thing.
Like it's been going on for 15
Yes,
minutes.
but he didn't call anybody. He didn't bother calling anybody. The jurors were deadlocked for 9 days in their deliberations. Fairstein began considering accepting a plea deal from Littman if he offered one. She would immediately try Chambers on burglary charges if the jury declared a mistrial, because she knows about the check forgeries, the stolen money from this neighbor. Like, there's a lot of other things that she's like, I can charge him with burglary for these various crimes. So it was on the final day, which was the 9th day, that Fairstein and Littman began hammering out the details of a plea agreement. He would plead to first-degree manslaughter, and he would be given 15 years in prison. So
that's what happened?
So they're going to accept this deal.
Oh, my God.
Okay, so in 2003, Dylan, Robert Chambers was released from prison, having served the entire term due to the number of infractions. The Levin family filed a wrongful death suit against Chambers. Any monies from books or television deals would go to them, up to $25 million. In July of 2005, Chambers was arrested on drug charges.
Big surprise.
He got 90 days in jail. On October 22nd of 2007, he was arrested again and charged with selling drugs alongside his longtime girlfriend, Shawn Koval, who had spent 15 years being his girlfriend while he was in jail, and then they're living together when he got out of jail. Talk about blind devotion.
Wow. Could you imagine if he was that girl's parents? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Chambers said he was an addict by 14, and that by 2007, this is what he's saying at this drug trial, that he was using 10 to 12 bags of heroin a day. So in 2007, he was sentenced to 19 years on the drug charges. His earliest release date is next year, 2024.
Really?
Yes.
So he got a good plea, in my opinion, as far as he's concerned. The best it could have worked out.
Yes.
Served all that time. Got out of jail. Went straight back to shitbirding.
Yes.
Because he couldn't wait. And then called another 19 years on drug charges.
Yes.
And, well, good for him.
So this has been the Preppy Murder, Dylan.
There was a lot in that. And I'm kind of, it's kind of sad that me and you were sickly as we did this story, because it was a really good story. Very horrible thing that happened to her. And I think Robert's a fucking shitbird.
Yes.
And I think he should have got life in prison or let someone throttle him to death. That should have been the things that happened to him.
One of my resources for today was a book by Linda Wolfe called Wasted Inside the Robert Chambers Jennifer Levin Murder. And also a documentary. I believe it is called The Preppy Murder. I'll have to look it up because I had written it down, but then I think I deleted it by accident.
The Preppy Murder.
Yeah, so it's a documentary. It's called The Preppy Murder, Death in Central Park, which came out in 2019.
Wow. And we want to thank everyone for listening to today's episode. And we want to thank Kat and Kathleen again for sponsoring this week's episode. And they are enjoying the ad-free and extra content over there at patreon.com/Mountain Murders Podcast, as you can as well.
And we do appreciate, we've received a lot of positive messages over the last few days, folks reaching out that listened to our last episode, saying that they hope we're going to be okay, and, you know, that how terrible they feel about what's happened at the paper mill. And, there, you know, a lot of folks who are from this area and that have left, and they're like, wow, this is just terrible news. And so we really do appreciate everybody who's reached out over the last few days to, you know, to give those kind words to us. It means a lot.
We do appreciate that. And you know, at first it's shock, and then you're scared, and then you start processing. And already there's been a lot of resources brought to bear here for these displaced mill workers. And I appreciate that. And just so you know, me and Heather are going to be okay.
Yeah, we're going to be okay.
We're going to be okay, luckier than some in this circumstance. And
we're just trying to stay positive.
Yeah.
Right?
We are.
But you know, they say bad thing happens in threes, Dylan. So you get that news. And then now we're both like super sick.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't even know what the third thing is going to be.
You know, who knows? Maybe we'll blow a tire on the car or something.
Oh, don't say that.
But we do appreciate everyone, and we appreciate you to continue to listen. That's the only reason we're able to keep doing Mountain Murders. And we will see you at the midweek.
Exactly, Dylan. I'm going to take some NyQuil. I'm going to take some NyQuil and maybe get a couple of those cough drops you got over there.
I got to go cough for like 5 minutes in a row.
Exactly. You guys have a great week. Bye.
Bye.